and welcome back to another episode on Born to Talk with Callanthea. Now, in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about societal expectations and some common phrases which really do suck, in my opinion. And the reason why I'm, wanting to discuss this is because we know that expectations can hinder us. Okay, whether it's expectations that we put on ourselves, or maybe it's expectations that are put on us from society. And if we can be aware of these expectations, then we can decide, do we want to follow suit, or is this something that I don't need to buy into? Because, if we do follow expectations, essentially what's going to happen is we're going to end up failing in some way. So it's really important that we can manage our own expectations. But as we know, there will be someone or many people that have said these kind of common phrases that get it into our heads that, oh, this is what I need to be able to do, or this is what I'm expecting at this certain time in my life. And I think it's just time that we just kind of really assess those and take a step back and really think, is this something that, like I said, I want to buy into? So, in today's episode, I'm going to be kind of focusing on three main kind of common phrases that are often spoken or mentioned in society, or at least in the UK. And I will obviously explain these. I'll kind of explain whether I was able to meet that standard, that expectation or not. And obviously share my experiences, because I do think that some of these absolutely do need kind of debunking, and we need to have more of a wider perspective. So if I make a start on the first one, then so many times I have heard people say, oh, university will be some of your best years, right? You're going to make friends for life at university. And I heard this before I even went to university, and I thought, great, I'm so excited. Not only am I going to get a degree, but I'm going to make loads of new friends. It's going to be a big party time, no responsibility, blah, blah, blah. And this is something that I think gets into everyone's heads. And there's nothing wrong with being excited to go to university and hoping that it's going to be a brilliant experience. But what I don't like about these common phrases is that it really kind of sets up many people to fail or feel inadequate in some way. And we know that humans are incredibly complex people, right? We are incredibly complex, and we all have different issues at different times in our lives. And I really do think that, especially in a society where we're trying to be more aware of mental health and things like that, and there's lots of people as well that, live in poverty, and it might be really challenging for them to get to university, or maybe they've not got enough financial support. There are so many factors that can hinder our experiences. And I think that these blanket statements saying that it's going to be the best years of your life, or you're going to make amazing friends for life here, I really do think that while this is true for some people, and that's brilliant if they've experienced that, it is still not fair to say that this is exactly how it's going to be. Because as we know, young children, they go to school, they go to primary school, secondary school, they go to college, and eventually they go to university, or most of them will do. And it is kind of drilled into us to kind of want to go to university. And of course, we look forward to growing up and getting older, and we look forward to all these new experiences that we're going to have. And I don't think that's a bad thing. However, just kind of outright saying that something's going to be the best of your life, right? The best time in your life, whatever it may be. Like I said, it is actually setting some people up to fail. So in relation to my experience, it was really difficult because when I went to university, I was actually going through a whole host of things, namely or mainly anxiety. And my anxiety impacted my eating and everything else. So it was really challenging for me to have to go to university struggling with mental health issues. I was looking forward to going to university, but it didn't make it easy. It didn't change the fact that I was struggling with this kind of anxiety, mental health issue. And that really kind of put a downer on my experience because I felt more alone. Like, it's not cool to tell people that you're struggling, right? That you've got to just be this party animal. You've got to just, be really happy and confident all the time. But really, I was really upset with what I was experiencing. I'd never experienced these sort of issues that I had in the first year at university. So I was just trying to figure things out, really. And I ended up having to go to counselling, towards the end of my first year, which really did help. It was brilliant. But I struggled that first year, really trying to evaluate, well, I used to be this really positive person. Now I'm going through this, these difficult times. I feel like I can't really turn to anyone. And, I see everyone else being really happy all the time. And I feel like I'm kind of falling behind. I'm falling short. It's supposed to be the best years of my life. So, we know that expectations, we can put them on ourselves, but essentially these kind of common phrases, or this particular phrase, okay, that everybody hears, oh, it's the best years of your life. It just means that when you have one of those days or a phase or a few weeks when you're not having the best time of your life, it can be hard to kind of look at yourself and think, oh, it's fine, it's no big deal. What tends to happen is we look at it and go, I'm not meeting that expectation that everyone else seems to be experiencing, that everyone else says I need to experience. And it really does put pressure on ourselves. And I wish that I could have had someone to kind of give me more wisdom during this time and say, look, it's got nothing to do with being the best time of your life. You'll have some fun moments, but you might have some difficult moments. That is life in general. Just do what you can, focus on your degree, try to enjoy yourself, but do not put pressure on yourself for it to be the best time of your life, because it's not going to be the best time of your life for everyone. And as we know, when people go to university, like I said, life, it does not stop, okay? You can have a whole host of factors hindering your ability to be happy, or, whether it's someone in your family who's recently died and you end up grieving, you don't have enough money, you're struggling with your own mental health. There can be so many reasons that actually make us feel really crap in our lives. And I think that, people who go to university, they've got enough on their plate as it is, trying to figure out a new place, figure out new people, obviously studying their subject, which is, a lot more independent, having to do, everything on your own. And I think that there's a lot of challenges there, So that is one that I do not like at all. And, if I ever have children, I would definitely say, if you want to go to university, brilliant. And if they said, oh, it's supposed to be the best years of my life, I'd say, well, that's not something I'm going to say to you, because it wasn't my experience and it's definitely not everyone's experience. So I know some people might be listening to this thinking, what you're on about? I really enjoyed university. It was fabulous. I wish I could go back. Well, that's brilliant. That's really good that you had that experience. And lots of people set out to have that amazing experience. But unfortunately, it's not the case for everyone. And I really do think that expectations can set us up to fail. It makes us fragile, right? If we succeed in it, we feel great. But the second it gets taken away, then we start to crumble. And that is something that I don't approve of. So that's one kind of common phrase, really, that I think that we need to let go of. So another common phrase that I have heard people say, and I kind of grew up with this as well, expecting this is the case, is saying that, when you turn 20, everything's going to be fabulous. Enjoy your 20s. You're young, you've got your freedom. Make sure you travel a lot during your 20s. And just, that you're going to love your 20s. So I obviously grew up with this kind of notion and was so excited thinking, oh, when I'm 20, when I leave university, I'm going to get my own place. I'm going to have a great job. I'm going to travel, have loads of friends, have a great social life. And again, really thinking that your 20s is going to be fabulous. What no one tells you is that, again, life sucks sometimes, and we all have as different problems during different times. So some people will sail through their 20s smoothly, unscathed, right? But I struggle to believe that that's the majority of the population. I would assume that the majority of the population in their 20s actually have to go through a lot of hustle and grind and struggle, a little bit like I did. So again, in my early 20s, I was still kind of going through lots of different issues. 1 minute I've overcome my anxiety and my eating problem. The next minute I'm having to deal with an insecurity issue and, having to deal with relationship issues and just, trying to find a job and, stay in a job that I enjoy, and just completely challenging all the time. And I think it wasn't so much that I can't handle those sort of issues, those difficult moments. It's more that we put extra sort of pain and suffering onto our external circumstances. So the suffering comes from those expectations, like, okay, well, let's say I'm struggling with my insecurity at the moment, right? But what really would bother me in my 20s is saying, yeah, but I'm supposed to enjoy my 20s. I'm supposed to be full of confidence and travel, and I'm young and I'm not going to be this age forever. And all of that silly pressure really does sort of make things seem a lot worse than what they probably are. And that is definitely my experience. Again, I really wish I had someone just to kind of guide me and say, stop putting pressure on yourself. It's nonsense. Your 20s are going to be difficult sometimes. Please don't put pressure on yourself. You've got your whole life ahead of you, rather than making it seem like, oh, if you're going to do it, you've got to do it now, right? You're in your 20s, you're young, you're fresh, everything's great. So my 20s really were not. I achieved a lot during my 20s. I had to do, whether it's getting my degree, finally leaving home and all of that sort of stuff. Getting a job, having a career, trying to figure things out. And, it's like, while I'm proud of the effort that I put into my 20s, I look back at my 20s, because I'm 30 now and I'm turning 31 in a few days. I look back at my 20s and I just think, I really wish I didn't sort of focus on the fact that I'm supposed to be really happy, and then because I'm not perfectly happy, I need to be miserable in my 20s. I just really wish I would have looked at it through a different perspective, not the one that society kind of put on me. And maybe some people are a little bit more kind of robust and don't really care what society says and doesn't get influenced. But I would imagine that most humans are influenced by these common phrases, especially if you've kind of grown up with it, and everyone around you, whether it's your family, your friends, your peers, everyone, just kind of having this attitude towards certain years of your life and what it's going to look like. Some people feel the pressure in the 20s to get married, right, to settle down, have kids before the 30 and things like that. You can have pressure in all different kinds of ways, and every society is slightly different. But ultimately, I think that we can all agree that as 20s, when we think about 20s, that we think, oh, well, you're still young, you're getting a bit of freedom, you've got lots to be happy about. But I think we can also agree that our 20s are about grinding, right? Especially in work. And that was kind of my experience. Not only did I have to, in the early 20s, have to deal with relationship issues, insecurity issues, which I'm so glad that I kind of did experience it now, looking back, because it meant that I could obviously overcome that sort of stuff earlier on, where some people don't face those problems head on, or they kind of come back to bite them in the ass when they're like in the 30s, 40s, 50s. And I'd rather deal with things younger so that it can set me up for a better life when I'm older. But at the time, I was like, why am I struggling with all of this stuff? I really don't like it. And feeling that resistance. And that resistance was clearly coming from that crazy notion of, the societal expectation of you in your 20s, you need to be happy, right? Just like how your university years need to be the best years of your life, your 20s need to be pretty damn good too. And it didn't feel like that for me for the most part in my 20s, which is why when I was turning 30, normally I'd get really upset about turning 30, right? I was so looking forward to it. I just felt like it's going to be a fresher decade for me, for sure. I've learned so much in my 20s. I'm really finding myself, and I'm proud of everything that I've achieved and proud of the resilience that I've had. So if you are listening to this and you're thinking, yeah, my 20s sucked a little bit too, or I'm in my 20s and it's not that great, well, there is hope, okay? There is hope that, first of all, reassure yourself that it's completely okay. Wherever you are at right now in your life, whatever age you are at, it is absolutely okay to be where you are at, okay? And eventually you will start to kind of grow and learn, and, if you're having a difficult time, eventually things will turn out better. And you just need to have more patience with yourself and understanding, and try your best to recognize these expectations from society and think, right, yes, lots of people might experience that, but it's certainly not everyone. Let me let this go because, my time might be in another decade, right? And I'm just going to keep on working hard to get myself to the place where I want to be. So please don't be hard on yourself. I know it's easy to say and difficult to do sometimes. I was definitely hard on myself in my 20s. But obviously, I've had to learn from that. And I really do value my 20s now when I look back at it and think, yeah, I achieved a lot during a lot of adversity, and that speaks volumes, and that's going to set me up for life, right? So it's not always about having this perfect attitude towards your 20s, like assuming that you need to always be taking pictures and being everywhere and having freedom and loving your career and everything else. I actually think your 20s can often be a lot of trial and error, right? You're actually just trying to find yourself. It's one thing when you're younger, you want to be in a certain career, and then another in your 20s to realize what it actually is like to be in that career and to do that job. So it is really challenging. And as well, when you're in your 20s and you get your first job, most jobs, due to lack of experience, won't pay very well. So it can take several years to build up more experience for you to obviously get those promotions, right, and pay rises. So we know that it can be challenging financially for people who are in their 20s. And again, I think that gets overlooked as well. And I know some people are very fortunate. They've got a very wealthy family that can support them. But again, it's not everyone. And I would say that it's not a lot of people. It's a small minority of people that do get set up for life through their family. Most people do have to work really, really hard to get to where they need to be. And your 20s can often be about the grind and the hard work. So, that's my perspective on 20s. So if you're sitting there thinking, well, I'm in my 20s, and I'm not really enjoying my 20s, just think that actually that's probably more normal than what you realise. And we need to let go of this. You're in your 20s, it's going to be great, everything's fabulous, make sure you travel. Well, you can't do everything. You cannot do absolutely everything. If you're struggling and grinding at work and trying to save money, it can be really hard to get everything that you want financially and to have the freedom that you want in your 20s. But I think it's just about being realistic and being self-aware, what has been put on us from society and what do we really want to take from it? Do we want to be that expectation? Do we want to not be bound by that expectation? And ultimately, it comes down to our choices, our decisions, and our reflections on our own lives and how we really feel about something. So, again, I feel like 20s really difficult, but really valuable. And you can learn so much from each decade of your life. And it kind of nicely brings me on to the third one now. And the third one is the common phrase where people might say, it's all downhill when you turn 30. Oh, God, I love that. Some people say it so often, right? Oh, when you're 30, it's all downhill, because you're no longer 21. And I just think it's ridiculous how people say these phrases because, again, this is actually a negative common phrase, right? Where people probably will not look forward to being 30. And what I notice is lots of people who are lovely and young, they want to stay looking young, right? The thought of getting older is terrifying. Some people think that being 30 is old. And they want to change the way they look and make sure that they stay looking young. And I just think, again, has that come from these sort of phrases that people say, like, yeah, it's downhill from there, your health's going to decline, your relationships might decline, there's no fun anymore. And that is so negative. And I think that we can really turn that around and take ownership, right? And not listen to these opinions and attitudes and expectations that are put on us a lot of the time. So, it's quite funny actually. My mum likes to remind me that when I was younger, I apparently said to her, oh, you can't have sex when you're 30, in your 30s, that's gross. And I don't remember saying, I remember having a conversation like that. I don't remember saying 30. But she likes to remind me of that and, says that, it is just kind of funny and ridiculous that I viewed 30 as really old, right? That you can't live life and enjoy life anymore. You can't have sex in your 30s, which obviously now I am 30 is completely ridiculous. I feel young. I look younger than my age. A lot of people think I look younger than my age as well. It's just mad. But this is again probably come from when you're younger, you kind of just view like, oh, when I'm 18, that's going to be fabulous. I'm finally an adult, get to drink. Oh, in my 20s, I'm going to travel the world, see everything I ever want to see. Oh, in my 30s, I'm either just going to be really old and crippled, or I have to settle down with the family. And we just get all these kind of notions and ideas that we think that we need to adhere to, right, in order for our lives to kind of follow suit, if you will. But yeah, it just goes to show you really that being 30 does have negative connotations, or at least society puts negative connotations on being 30. Which kind of brings me to my experience now, because I mentioned that 20s, while people typically view them as a really positive time, they can absolutely be a very challenging time and a time to grind at work and figure out your life and figure out yourself. And I was really glad to have my 20s behind me. And while it was a valuable time, I really do feel like I've learnt so much. I've moved from that now, moving into a new era, and I get to kind of, choose what I want to do in my life because I've learnt so much. I've done the hard work within myself. So I think that the 30s can be really empowering, not downhill, right? Going uphill, only things getting better. And I think that that is really something to kind of be excited about. And, whether you change your external circumstances, which I've done this year, done quite a lot of that, whether it's, changing jobs, etc. And of course, obviously the inner work, really recognizing who am I and what kind of person do I really want to be? How do I live more authentically? And I think as well as you get a bit older, you start to learn that it doesn't really matter what people think. That doesn't mean to say we're never ever bothered by it, but it doesn't really matter. You're aware that it does not matter. And I think that that's really empowering because you just get to be your true self a lot easier when you're 30. And also in your 30s as well, if you've been in a job and you're obviously more experienced, people will look at you with more sort of respect and admiration, and you'd probably be treated a little bit fairer. Whereas in your 20s, I think people look at you as though you're really young, you don't know what you're doing, and that can be obviously a disadvantage. People will abuse that situation. So in your 30s, it's about being authentic, about, understanding yourself better. So that's what I think about my 30s, and I'm really looking forward to it. And it's quite funny, I've got this mug that says 30 on it, and I've been drinking from it most of this year, and I am going to be turning 31 in a few days, so I'm kind of like, oh, do I still drink from this mug? And I think I'm gonna, because it is symbolic of the 30s decade, which to me is going to be so much better than my 20s, just because I know I've already done so much hard work before it. So I just kind of wanted to touch upon all of these really. These kind of common phrases, they do not have to be relevant to us. We do not have to meet that expectation. We don't have to think that the university years are going to be the best years of our lives. Look at people that went to university during COVID, right? That was really challenging for them, really difficult for them. And I bet what made it harder for them is the fact that it's supposed to be the best years of their life, right? They're putting that expectation on themselves because they've got it from society. And I bet some of them really struggle with that and were miserable because of it. Whereas if we can just say, look, it's just another thing that you have to do, or not have to do, but if you're going to get a degree, that's the main reason why you're going to university. So as long as you do the hard work, just try to enjoy it, but it is where it is, okay? The world is where it's at this moment in time, and you just have to work with it. You have to be in the flow with it. So, and again, similarly, just like your 20s, it doesn't have to be that your 20s are your time for travel and fun and, just enjoying everything, because it could be a really difficult time for you. And again, that's more than okay. Like, we all have ups and downs throughout our lives, and we shouldn't be putting undue pressure on ourselves and taking these expectations, which aren't necessarily going to work for us, right? And could make us feel worse about ourselves. So, And again, just like 30s, if you're thinking, well, I'm turning 30 soon, it doesn't have to be a negative thing, right? Just reflect on what you've already achieved in your life, how far you've come, the adversity you've had to go through, and just recognize you can take those lessons into being 30 and you can make, the 30s decade be something better than just a downhill sort of age. So I hope that you've really enjoyed this episode and you've taken something from it and that you feel a little bit more rest assured with where you're at in your life and a little bit more empowered to kind of, recognize these expectations that are put on us through society and to decide that you can choose to let go of them and create the life that you want. So thank you so much for listening. Okay, stay true to you and hopefully I'll see you soon.